Professional football, in my view, is an important cultural institution in this country. So our focus, therefore, should be eradicating the left-wing propaganda and anti-white messaging that the league continues to promulgate, as we've eradicated it from so many other cultural institutions in recent years. Well, it's official for the 7th straight year. A white guy will not be headlining the Super Bowl halftime show, unless you count Eminem's brief appearance in the 2022 halftime show with Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, which you really shouldn't. The last white performers to headline the Super Bowl were Maroon 5 back in 2019. And since then, we've been treated to performances by luminaries like Usher, Kendrick Lamar, Rihanna, The Weeknd, and so on. It's as if the NFL couldn't find a single white person singing actual music anywhere in the entire country for the better part of a decade. You don't need to be a calculus professor to understand the statistical implications here. The NFL has made the deliberate decision to basically discriminate against white performers in the name of diversity. It's the same reason that they still insist on having those dumb slogans in the end zone. The league is captured by, at the corporate level anyway, by anti-white leftists who, unlike the vast majority of the country, haven't progressed beyond the George Floyd era. And as a result, year after year, the Super Bowl halftime performances haven't resembled music so much as they've resembled the barely coherent ramblings of the local strip mall vagrant. Half of what Kendrick Lamar said was incomprehensible in the last Super Bowl halftime show. To the extent that he had a big moment during his performance, it was to accuse another rapper of being a pedophile. So we're talking about, real fine art here. With each passing year, the performances become even more painful, almost as if they're sort of a form of ritual humiliation. And that said, through all of this, at least the NFL had the decency to ensure that the performers could still speak the English language, at least in a nominal sense. That was a very low bar, admittedly, but the NFL executives were able to clear it. Even though you couldn't understand what the performers were saying half the time, at least in the abstract, they were technically reciting lyrics that have meaning in the English language. At least superficially, the NFL was still pretending to be an American league, even if they, are increasingly hosting games overseas. But that now has changed. As you may have seen, the NFL has just announced that Benito Antonio Martinez Ocasio, better known by his stage name Bad Bunny, will headline the 2026 Super Bowl halftime show. And here's the NFL's big reveal. Watch.
Se acostó temprano, mañana hay que estudiar. Pero llamó a la amiga diciendo pa' janguear.
Well, there it is. It's official. Puerto Rico's finest, Bad Bunny, will be the Apple Music Super Bowl 60 halftime show in February on NBC and Peacock.
So there's the whole Puerto Rican Humpty Dumpty aesthetic going on. He's not saying anything because he can't speak English. None of his songs are in English either. And then the reporter in English tells us that we should be excited by this development. We should be thrilled to hear songs like this one, apparently. There are chain restaurants there are Applebee's bars with more talented musicians than this. But we're told that we're supposed to be impressed by Antonio, which is why he's constantly on SNL, streaming services, the Super Bowl, all over the place, being promoted relentlessly because he represents demographic replacement. You're not supposed to say that, but that's true. They want to send the message that America is not for English-speaking Americans anymore. And it's not hard to identify who specifically is making this decision. The NFL has the ultimate veto power, but from what I could tell, Jay-Z is the primary decision maker behind all the selections for Super Bowl halftime shows. His company, Rock Nation, has had an exclusive deal with the NFL since 2019, which just so happens to be the last year that any white people were allowed to appear on the stage. Also in 2019, Rock Nation and the NFL announced a commitment to an Inspire Change social activism campaign, which explicitly advocates for letting criminals out on the street before trial. I'm not making that up, by the way. Look at the fourth bullet point here. This is from the NFL's website. Quote, criminal justice reform, providing transition support for the formerly incarcerated and advocating for key reforms to the criminal legal system, including pre-trial detention. All right, let me paint a picture. It's Tuesday morning. You reach your supplements and vitamins, and you get an empty bottle. Great. Well, now you get to spend your lunch break driving to some overpriced vitamin store because you forgot to reorder again. Or you could just make it automatic with Balance of Nature. I became a Balance of Nature preferred customer because, honestly, I have better things to do than remember when I'm running low on supplements. Every 28 days, they just show up like clockwork. No brain power required. And here's the part that's actually pretty sweet. You get the lowest price they offer every single time. No coupon hunting, no flash sale nonsense, just the best price automatically. And an extra bonus, shipping is totally free every month. Nice to see a company that doesn't nickel and dime you to death. But here's what really surprised me. You get your own personal health coach, an actual human who checks in with you and helps keep you on track. Go to balanceofnature.com. Use promo code Walsh for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer. Plus, get a free bottle of fiber and spice. That's balanceofnature.com. Promo code Walsh. Your future self will thank you. Now, translation, they want criminals to spend as little time in prison as possible. They also want to reform policing, meaning they want to get rid of it. The people who wrote these bullet points are the same people who picked Antonio for the halftime show. So it's a political pick, period. To be clear, Antonio is not simply a foreigner who can't sing or speak English. He's also a far, far rabid leftist who wears dresses and who, like all leftists, lacks any semblance of self-awareness or shame. It's actually pretty staggering in this case. Just a few days ago, Antonio issued a very clear promise that he wouldn't perform in the United States anymore, supposedly in order to protect his fans from being deported during his shows. He said he's willing to sacrifice millions of dollars in revenue solely to protect criminals from getting rounded up and shipped overseas during his concerts. But now that the NFL called and they backed up a dump truck full of pesos, suddenly Antonio's on board. Suddenly the fans don't matter anymore. He'll be performing at Levi's Stadium in California next year, 100%. And even though the state is teeming with illegal aliens who could be deported at the game. This is from ABC News. Quote, Puerto Rican musician Bad Bunny said in an interview that he did not include the United States in the 2025-2026 concert tour because of fear that U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement would raid the concert venue. People from the U.S. could come here to see the shows. Latinos and Puerto Ricans of the United States could also travel here or to any part of the world, he told the magazine. But there was the issue that ICE could be outside of my concert venue, and it's something that we were talking about and very concerned about. The musician has previously been critical of ICE operations, which have intensified under U.S. President Donald Trump. He posted an Instagram video in June in which he expressed outrage at federal agents in Puerto Rico for not leaving these people working here alone. Well, you know what this means. ICE has the opportunity to conduct by far the single most effective, not to mention hilarious operation in all of ICE history. This has the potential to be even better than deporting Abrego Garcia to a random country in Africa that doesn't even exist. If you've seen the movie Trap, or if you've seen the previews anyway, by M. Night Shyamalan, then you know exactly how this could work. Except instead of trying to find one serial killer after they seal off the stadium once the musical number starts, they could just deport everyone in attendance. Now, to be fair, everyone has fair warning from Antonio himself, and they showed up anyway, so they don't get to play the victim. Now, for all we know, maybe that's why Antonio signed on to this gig. It's entirely possible that he's working with DHS as a double agent at this point. Certainly, if I were an illegal alien in California and I heard a man in a dress using the name Bad Bunny tell me that I'll be deported at one of his shows, only to see him change his mind a few days later and tell me to attend one of his shows, I mean, I'd be a little suspicious. Either he was lying before or he's lying now. And neither option is reassuring. Now, what would be reassuring for the millions of actual Americans who still follow the NFL would be for the league to demonstrate just once that it understands or even likes its own fan base. For the better part of a decade, particularly with the social justice BLM messaging and the halftime shows, the league has made it clear that it holds most of the country in contempt solely on the basis of their nationality, their skin color, and also their assumed political views. Now, in various conservative circles, as a result, there have been calls to boycott the NFL, just like we boycotted companies like Target and Bud Light. I have not joined those calls because, by and large, as I've argued often, sports are one of the few mainstream ways that Americans can express and celebrate important virtues like meritocracy, masculinity, competition. And sports are an important part of culture. That's going. Every culture in history has had sports. It's important, just like art is an important part of culture. And despite the best efforts of the league executives, that remains the case. Professional football, in my view, is an important cultural institution in this country. So our focus, therefore, should be eradicating the left-wing propaganda and anti-white messaging that the league continues to promulgate, as we've eradicated it from so many other cultural institutions in recent years. The backlash to this upcoming halftime show makes it very clear that we're making progress in that direction. And now that backlash must intensify until finally an actual American who speaks English performs at the Super Bowl. And that is why the anti-white and anti-American executives at the NFL, along with Antonio, the man in the dress, aka Bad Bunny, are all today canceled. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.